Good morning. A to Z Mysteries, The Absent Author, written by Ron Roy, published by Scholastic. We're on chapter 8. Dink's jeans were nearly dry by the time they reached the hotel. Mavis was waiting out front. "How was your lunch?" she asked timidly. "Fine, thanks," Dink said. "We talked it over. We think there's something fishy going on the third floor of this hotel." Suddenly, Mavis began coughing. She held her scarf in front of her mouth. Dink noticed that the letters on her scarf were tiny M's. "Are you okay?" he asked. "Should I run and get you some water?" asked Josh. Mavis took off her glasses and shook her head. "No, I'm fine, thank you. Oh, dear me, I don't know what just happened. Now, what were you saying about the third floor?" "We think Wallace Wallace may be up there," Ruth Rose said. She reminded Mavis about the smudge signature for room 302 and the do not disturb sign on the door. Mavis replaced her eyeglasses. "Mercy, what do you think we should do?" "Follow me," Dink said. For the second time, they trooped into the hotel lobby. Together, Mr. Linkletter watched them from behind the counter. "Hi," Dink said. "Remember us?" "Vividly," Mr. Linkletter said. "Wallace Wallace checked into room 303, right?" "That is right," said Mr. Linkletter. "Well, we talked to the maid who cleaned that room," Dink went on. "She told us that no one slept in it." "You spoke to Olivia Nugent? When? How?" "We have our ways," Josh said. "So," Dink went on, "we think Wallace Wallace disappeared right here in the hotel. And Wallace Wallace is a very famous writer," Ruth Rose reminded Mr. Linkletter. "Millions of kids were waiting to read his next book," she added sweetly. Mr. Linkletter's sad eyes grew large. He swallowed. His Adam's apple bobbed up and down. He rubbed his forehead as though he had a headache. Then Dink told Mr. Linkletter about room 302. Miss Nugent said there was a do not disturb sign on the door. Ruth Rose pointed to the register. "See, the signature's all smudged. We think the kidnappers are hiding Wallace Wallace in that room," Josh said. At the word kidnappers, Mr. Linkletter closed his eyes. He opened a drawer, took out a bottle of headache pills, took one on his tongue. "Just to be on the safe side, perhaps we should check both rooms, Mr. Linkletter," Mavis said. "It'll just take a minute," Dink said. Mr. Linkletter let out a big sigh. "Very well. But this is most unusual. Things run very smoothly at the Shangri-La." They all got into the elevator. No one spoke. Dink watched Mr. Linkletter jiggling his bunch of keys. Mr. Linkletter kept his eyes on the little arrow telling them which floor they were on. The elevator door opened on the third floor. Scouty's eating a bone. So that's the sounds you hear. Mr. Linkletter kept his eyes on the little arrow telling them which floor they were on. The elevator door opened on the third floor. Mr. Linkletter unlocked room 303. "Most unusual," he muttered. The room was empty and spotlessly clean. "Strange, very strange," Mr. Linkletter said. They moved to room 302, where the do not disturb sign still hung on the doorknob. Mr. Linkletter knocked. They all leaned toward the door. "Listen, I hear a voice," Josh said. "What is it saying?" Ruth Rose asked. Then they all heard it. The voice was muffled, but it was definitely yelling, "Help!" And that's it for chapter 8.